Today we'll start with disaster management. There will be around 3 to 4 lectures of disaster management. This is part of your GS3 paper, if you are aware about the syllabus. So what is mentioned in the syllabus? Disaster and disaster management. This much is written there. So we have to understand from the previous year questions what is the nature of questions that are being asked in the examination. At the same time, the basics about the disaster. Okay, so first of all, what we'll do is try to know about our agenda in this module, and then we can start the lecture. Okay, so yes, we'll start with the concept of natural hazard and natural disaster. What is the difference between natural hazard? What is the difference, or we can say natural disaster? We'll try to understand that. Then we'll try to know about different types of natural disasters. Therein we'll try to know about atmospheric, then we can say terrestrial, aquatic, fourth biological. Okay, different types of disasters, natural disasters, we'll try to know about them, basics. Then in detail we'll try to know about, by taking each and every important natural disaster in detail, we'll try to know about the management of disasters. Okay, we'll not go into details of how these phenomena are happening. This is not part of natural disasters or disaster management in GS3 paper. That is part of GS1 paper, geography part. Okay, so in geography GS1 paper there is syllabus point which talks about different natural phenomena. Right, there tropical cyclones are there, or we can say earthquake, tsunami, all these basics about them, the causing factors and their impact. That we learn in GS1 paper. But here the management of disaster will be focused. We'll quickly learn about the causing factors also. Okay, but the focus will be on management of these disasters. So one by one important disasters we'll try to cover the management, because the questions can be specific to one type of disaster. Like the previous year they asked about landslides. Okay, so there can be question related to COVID-19 as a biological disaster now. We are expecting this year itself this question. There was already question in GS2 paper related to Disaster Management Act. But now we are expecting such question related to legal aspect in GS3 paper also. Okay, so in that part here we'll talk about, let's say, a role of NDMA. Role of NDMA in disaster management. We are expecting the institutional role also, National Disaster Management Authority. So how this NDMA and its structure works as a response to any kind of disaster that is happening in the country. Okay, so in this part itself we will talk about NDMA Act or DMA, Disaster Management Act 2005, legal provisions. Okay, then we will talk specifically about COVID-19, because we are expecting such questions, so we will separately deal with this COVID-19 as a biological disaster, as a notified disaster under NDMA Act 2005. Okay, so we'll try to know about COVID-19 and how response of the government has been there since last 1.5 years.
So it comes under NDMA.
Which one?
COVID-19.
Yes, COVID-19 was declared as notified disaster under this NDMA Act immediately last year in March 2020. Notified disaster, but there is no provision of any kind of notified disaster. Try to understand. This was very much new to the government itself. Such kind of pandemic or pan-India level biological disaster, which required a very unique sets of actions as compared to other disasters. Okay, so that's why the government had to make some changes, like it created new kind of variety there under this act, notified disaster. Okay, and a slew of measures were undertaken, the guidelines were given to the states, so we'll try to know about that separately. Okay, now after understanding this, we have to also understand ultimately when we are talking about role of NDMA, there will also know about the National Disaster Management Plan that we have. Okay, so in 2016 NDMA has come up with National Disaster Management Plan, and we'll try to know about that plan also. For each and every disaster, how this NDMA guidelines works. Okay, so whenever we are writing way forward in the answer, we will directly write whatever the guidelines are there by NDMA. This is expert body, right? We are not experts in disaster management. So what we will do? We will give the suggestions of expert body. So in this manner we will discuss, and ultimately as a final part you should be also talk about, let's say, international cooperation in disaster management. Why? Because some of the disasters are regional in nature, or let's say at the world level these disasters, like for example COVID-19, at world level it is happening, right? So there will be some kind of international cooperation, there will be some kind of regional we can say cooperation required in disaster management.
Increase in sea level.
Yes, increase in sea level, be it that aspect, or we can talk about, let's say, climate change and global warming and how the countries are working to deal with that disaster also. We can talk about, let's say, how there should be response to a particular type of disaster like tsunami. So we know that some of the countries are cooperating with, we can say, how to deal with tsunami disaster. Okay, especially after 2004 tsunami that happened. So India is also involved in capacity building of some of the regional countries in Indian Ocean region, right? So yes, also we know about cyclone warning system. So India Meteorological Department disseminate warning to other 13 countries in the region, okay, which may be affected by the tropical cyclones. So in this manner, quickly we'll have look. This is new aspect because the nature of disasters is changing. So for that purpose, the international, and we know that there is one initiative by India. What is that? Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Are you aware about such kind of international cooperation? It is led by India. Okay, so Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So this is also important initiative in the international arena, we can say. Okay, we'll deal with that in detail. One by one we are going to discuss all these aspects of disaster management, conceptually as well as legal aspects, structural aspects related to disaster management. Everything we are going to understand here. So if the question is asked specifically for any disaster, we'll try to understand that part. You will be able to deal that question also. If the question is talking about administrative machinery, how administrative machinery in India works, like this NDMA or the state level disaster management, then district level disaster management authority is there, how it works, administrative machinery, what are the legal provisions in India. Okay, so all these aspects we are going to discuss separately. At the same time, we have to also understand the nature of disasters. So conceptually also it should be very clear. Let us start with the, but before that let me give you some resources. I would say only two important resources which are very much sufficient. First is that 11th standard NCRT, India, and or we can say natural environment, something like that. 11th standard NCRT is there, India physical, right? So last chapter, 7th chapter of this book, okay, everything about this natural disaster, basics about that is covered there. Okay, now after reading this, we are moving towards a website of NDMA. So what to look for there? You look for, download the PDF of that National Disaster Management Plan. Then there is, we can say, awareness section. There is awareness section. If you scroll down there, different sections are there. There is awareness section. So for different kind of disaster, how this NDMA is making spreading the awareness among the people. So there are different charts, pictographic, we can say, charts are given there. So from that you need to take information. At the same time, there is one bulletin, monthly bulletin there. Name of that is something Samvad is there, Samvad, not remembering exactly name. So it is available on that website. So whenever a particular disaster happens in the previous month, so basics about that are covered there. For example, cyclone Yas and cyclone Tautay was there. In May month they covered about that. When there was, we can say, what was that? Chamoli district landslide that happened, no, avalanche, and after that flooding happened in February month. So after that also they covered this glacial lake outburst flood. Okay, so this is new phenomenon. So basically you need not to find any material in the market. Try to understand this, because any, let's say, material in the market, it is not comprehensive. Okay, so in one place you are getting the expert material, and this bulletin is in a very simple language which is very much understandable by the common people. Okay, so refer to these bulletins here. And then we can say that obviously current affairs. So in current affairs, focus on newspaper. Obviously whenever there is, suppose there is cyclone, there will be extensive coverage by the newspapers. So if you are reading the Hindu or Indian Express, so they are covering all these things. Okay, so these are the resources that you need to follow. Okay, now let us try to start with the lecture, but first of all we will try to understand what is natural hazard and how it is different from natural disaster. Okay, simply as the name suggests, hazard, disaster. Hazard means it is something that there is probability that the people may get harmed. There is probability that the property may get damaged. Hazard. Okay, so we know about that. Oh, that is hazard, we should not go there. Something like that, right? But the disaster is something which is out of human control. Whatever the forces that are responsible for that disaster, they are out of human control. Okay, first thing, let me tell you that you should not write in the classroom. We are going to dictate each and everything. First of all, in classroom, pay attention. In the first part of the lecture, we will try to understand the concepts, everything, and then we will dictate everything. Okay, in this manner you will have comprehensive material for the revision. Also the concepts, they should be clear in the classroom itself. Okay, so yes, we are talking about the natural hazards and natural disasters. We know that in geography we learn that Earth's surface is dynamic. Why we are saying Earth's surface is dynamic? Because it is acted upon by various forces, external as well as internal forces. Which are these forces? External forces that are driven by the solar insolation, and internal forces from inside, interior of the earth, the heat energy, be it let's say radioactive decay of the elements or residual heat inside the earth. So that is acting as an internal force, and these forces are continuously changing the land surface or whatever the different landforms are there on the earth's surface. Okay, and this change is the only constant thing that we observe in the environment. Okay, so if we are simply talking about, let's say in childhood, suppose we visited a particular place, and suppose after 20 years we are visiting that place, that will look different. Okay, that will look different because different environmental forces have been acting on that. Now this change sometimes may be gradual, this change sometimes may be sudden. This change sometimes is gradual. For example, soil erosion, very gradual process. Global warming that is happening, gradual process. It is happening over the years. Small change is happening. It is not visible through naked eyes or perceivable through naked eyes. Sea level rise, whether it is visible over 1 month, 1 year, rather we are calculating for over the number of years, right? But sometimes such change is sudden. For example, volcanic eruption, sudden, earthquake, sudden, or tsunami waves, sudden change is happening. And when such sudden change is happening, people, or we can say human being, finds itself as a receiving end. Okay, so we can say that such natural disasters, they are undesirable change. They are undesirable changes. First thing. Second thing, the factors which are responsible for those natural disasters, or the forces which are responsible for those disasters, they are out of control of human being. Can we control volcanic eruption? Can we control earthquake? Can we control tsunami? No. The forces which are originating these natural, are responsible for natural disasters, they are out of control of human being. The third thing is that they are responsible for loss of life and property, damage to the property. Large scale damage happens. Whenever the natural disaster happens, large scale damage to the human property and human life also is lost during such natural disaster. This is the threat, we can say that, for this. And ultimately we can say that it requires large scale mobilization of resources to deal with it. This is how we talk about natural disasters. Now it is different from natural hazards, because natural hazard is a part of natural environment. Volcanic eruption, suppose it is happening. Suppose the human settlement is not there, and volcanic eruption is happening in the geological past of the earth. When the humans were not there, volcanic eruption was happening. right? So this is part of environment, but when it is affecting human or human related activities, infrastructure, property, then we can say that it is disaster. Okay, substantially it is affecting. So basically we should understand that it is undesirable. For whom? For human. Okay, so because nature is neutral, nature is not worrying about whether this change is impacting any of its component or component of ecosystem, other animals, plants. Rather nature is neutral, it is undesirable for human being. Second thing is that forces are out of control of human being. So what we are at receiving end. What we can work upon here is only for disaster preparedness and disaster mitigation. What is in our control? We can reduce the impact of these disasters. We can prepare ourselves at the best to reduce this impact, loss of life and property. Okay. There has been, let's say, understanding of natural disaster traditionally that we cannot do anything about disaster and we have to only accept that. But with the help of technology, new technologies and understanding of this disaster, nowadays we are also focusing on reducing this loss of life and property. Along with that, we should also understand that the nature of disasters is changing over the period of time, and now man-made activities, human or anthropological activities are also contributing to the natural disaster, directly or indirectly. Directly or indirectly. How we are contributing? For example, can you give example? Yes?
So landslides.
Yes. So tell me how landslides are happening, how human activities are contributing to the landslides? Very good. Deforestation is there. Then?
Illegal construction.
Yes, we can say that the construction activities along the slopes without, let's say, the slope aspect is scientifically analyzed, right? So we can say that unsustainable or illegal construction activities along the slope. Then unscientific agri practices or farming practices along the slopes, right? This is also affecting. Then we also say that building of, let's say, dams, hydroelectricity projects in the mountainous area. So basically, or tunnels, road constructions, infrastructure projects, basically we are changing the aspects, slope and the structure of these mountains, and because of that there is probability there will be landslide. So human factors, they are contributing to the landslide. Landslides, natural hazard, naturally also that is happening, but man-made factors are aggravating these processes. For example, soil erosion is natural process, right? Soil erosion is natural process. Soil formation, soil erosion goes hand in hand on the earth's surface, right? So in recent times, due to man-made factors, soil erosion rate has further increased as compared to soil formation. This is part of natural disaster. Okay, so for example, what we are doing, again, deforestation, construction activities. These are resulting into more and more soil erosion. We can also say that unscientific agriculture or farming practices, that is also resulting into more soil erosion. Okay, so these man-made factors, you can give the example of floods also. What we are doing in the floods? We are again, deforestation is there. We are doing construction activities in the river channels. Obviously, river बोलेगा ये हमारा घर है, ठीक है? तो basically what we are doing is we are encroaching into the natural streams or whatever the channels they are, their limits, we have to understand that. So because of that, we can say human activities are also resulting. You can give the example of, we can say, the ozone hole depletion. You can give the example of climate change and global warming. So these are also part of, you can say, man-made factors contributing to natural disasters. There is also third component which is called as man-made disasters. What are man-made disasters?
Sir, can we include pandemic?
Sorry?
Sir, this pandemic can we include in man-made disaster?
We can include, but we can say that man-made factors contributed to that. That is biological disaster. But there are specific disasters that can happen due to only purely man-made factors. For example, you can give the example of hospital fires. Last year we witnessed many such industrial disasters. Can you give example last year?
Sir, Bhopal gas tragedy will also be in the industrial disasters, right?
Yes, very good. Bhopal gas tragedy, Chernobyl accident. Last year, Vizag, sarin gas. Okay, these are man-made disaster. And there is, again, you can give one more example, that is stampedes during religious ceremonies. There are chances of stampedes. What happened 2 years back in Mumbai? There was stampede on the overbridge, railway overbridge, and many people died in that stampede. In regular activity, in day-to-day activity, this stampede happened. Okay, and people were not able to, they were panicked. They believed in rumors, and this is how stampedes happen. This is man-made disaster. Okay, so you can give such examples. You need to be aware about concept. This is man-made disaster, and this is, let's say, natural disaster, and some of the factors they are contributing towards this natural disaster. Right. So now you have understood what is the difference between natural hazard and natural disaster and the meaning of natural. You need to mention the scientific definition, and you need to write in this manner. A natural disaster is an undesirable event or the changes that are happening in the environment of human being, where the forces responsible for that disaster are largely out of control of human being, and it results into large scale loss of human life and property. And to manage that event, it requires large scale mobilization of resources. In this manner you should write definition. Okay, otherwise it will become very general. Okay, so this is given in NCERT, and whatever given in NCERT, it is expected that you should write in your answer. Okay, now after understanding this, what we'll try to know is types of disasters. In types of disasters, or we'll say classification of disasters, categorization, classification. Simply you should know about that. We'll first of all enlist them. Atmospheric is there, then we have terrestrial, then we have aquatic and biological. Okay, so you tell me first of all, in atmospheric, simply what we observe. Yes, okay, ozone depletion, but first of all major ones we will write down.
Tornado, sir.
Yes,
Tornado, sir.
what he saying?
Tornado,
Oh
sir.
yes, tornado. We will write down cyclones, thunderstorms, heat waves, cold waves, hailstorms.
Frost, sir.
Sorry?
Frost, sir.
Yes, we can say that frost and fog, but we will not say that as a natural disaster. But large scale impact is not there. Localized impact is there, right? Frost is happening largely in the mountainous valleys areas, right? So we will not say that as a natural disaster, which does not fit into that definition. No, we will write down that in terrestrial. In atmosphere, we will try to cover the atmospheric phenomena. So yes, blizzards are there. Yes, we'll write down cloudburst, but that we'll write down in aquatic. So that is resulting into, or yes, we can say that cloudburst is there. Like
Sir, lightning also will be there.
yes, very good. Lightning is there, thunderstorm and lightning. Okay. Yes, so these are atmospheric. We will try to add whenever we remember few others. Yes. Okay. Now terrestrial. Yes, first and foremost is earthquake. Then we can talk about volcanoes. Then we have
Landslide, sir.
yes, landslide is there. Then
Avalanches, sir.
very good. Snow avalanches is happening. Soil erosion, soil creep. So all these are covered there. Mass movements. Landslide is also part of mass movement. Okay.
Subsidence.
You can say that subsidence, but this is actually manifestation, right? Of earthquake or such kind of events that are happening. Okay. Yes. Then okay, landslide is there, it is covered. Yes, in aquatic we'll write down floods. Here you can add droughts also. Okay, this is atmospheric. Drought.
Disaster.
Yes, drought is a disaster. Okay, natural disaster we'll say. Okay, it fits into that definition. Yes, floods are there. Then in aquatic, tsunami is there. Storm surge.
Glacier melting.
Sorry.
Glacier melting of glaciers.
Yes, we'll say that glacial lake outburst flood. Unique term is there. We'll discuss that part also. In recent times, in Uttarakhand and in Himachal Pradesh, such kind of glacial lake outburst floods possibility is always there. Then in aquatic,
Tidal waves.
yes, tidal surge, we'll say that.
Sir, melting of ice at polar regions can be included.
Sorry,
Sir, melting of ice at polar.
we'll say that sea level rise. It is resulting into sea level rise. Okay, melting of ice caps in the polar region as well as melting of icebergs or ice caps in the mountainous region, that is resulting into sea level rise or flooding. Okay, so yes, in aquatic phenomenon you can write down. Then in biological, here you can say that like locust attack. Locust attack last year or last year. Locust swarms, there was attack, right? So many countries in Arab countries as well as Pakistan, India faced the problem of locust attack. Then you can say that bacteria, virus. So you can give the example of COVID-19 here. Okay, so biological disasters. So it is not only about the human being getting affected. Rather, you can give the example of the animal diseases also, as well as plant diseases also. Okay, that is also natural disaster, because that is affecting human property. Though it is not affecting human lives, but it is affecting property also. Like locust attack, largely it impacted crops, right? It damaged crops, not humans, human structure. So we will consider as biological disaster. Okay, then fine. So in this manner, we will discuss all these natural disaster. Other remaining we will try to cover. In this atmospheric, you can say global warming and climate change also. Okay, ozone layer depletion and all these things. Remaining will be man-made disasters. Okay, so be it industrial chemical disaster or man-made stampede is there, or the fire accidents are there. Okay, so we'll call them as man-made disasters. So here we will cover the forest fire. Sorry, one more terrestrial forest fires. Last year in December, last year December month, January month, we witnessed the Australia. Okay, Australian forest fires. Actually, it is annual phenomenon, but this was very severe event. Okay. We will say both. Okay, because what happens is in forest fires, let's say the type of forest, that also plays important role. Like deciduous forest is there, and that the leaves which are falling on the ground, okay, they are kind of leaves which small temperature rise results into burning, chances of burning, and that continuously spreads. Okay. Similarly, some man-made factors are there, but not established, like global warming. Okay, so because of global warming, it is being said that the drought was severe that year, and because of that drought, further it aggravated the problem of forest fire. But these are annual phenomena. Okay, yes. Now, after understanding these types, what we are going to learn is, for each and every natural disaster, important natural disaster, we are going to go into details. But before that, we are trying to understand what is disaster management. Okay, what is disaster management and its components? So yes, as just now we have said that the forces responsible are out of control. So what is in our hands? Disaster preparedness and disaster mitigation. Okay, so disaster management focuses on that aspect. And how it focuses on this? In 3 phases, 3 stages we will say. First, pre-disaster, during disaster, and third, post-disaster. Right? These are the 3 stages, and different kind of activities, responses from people, from the administration is required in the management of disaster. Okay, so what is required in pre-disaster? We are going to learn for each and every disaster in these 3 aspects. Okay, for example, earthquake. What will be required for pre-disaster, during disaster, post-disaster? Landslide, cyclone, for each and every important disaster we will try to know. But in general, in pre-disaster, there will be like vulnerability and risk assessment, and we can say mapping. There will be we can say that early warning system. There will be, we can say, education and awareness. Whatever the preventive measures are there, so we will say that they should be covered in pre-disaster match. Okay, so awareness among the people, early warning and risk mapping and assessment. So overall it is part of disaster preparedness. Okay, disaster preparedness. So this is among the people, but administration should be having, let's say, appropriate preparedness. For example, some of the natural disasters are recurring in nature. They are recurring in nature. For example, tropical cyclones. So, like eastern states of Odisha, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, and to some extent Tamil Nadu, and on the western coast, Gujarat. They are more vulnerable. Every year there is possibility that the tropical cyclone will have landfall on these coasts. So, the capacity building of administration, local administration, district level administration to deal with such kind of events. So that is also part of disaster preparedness. Okay, so what they need to have in advance, they need to have the resources in terms of human and we can say material resources. They need to construct the number of shelter homes, cyclone homes they are called, shelter homes. So they need to have emergency communication channels whenever such cyclone happens that results into destruction of all the communication channels, right? So they need to have emergency, they need to provide the early warning to the people, the fishermen, all these things are there as a part of administration. During the disaster, rescue and relief, these are part of during the disaster. Okay, so whenever cyclone is, let's say, happening, so part of rescue operation and relief operations by NDMA, right? So sorry, NDRF, not NDMA. NDRF is there, National Disaster Response Forces are there, SDRF is also there, State Disaster Response Forces are there. Many times when it is insufficient, then armed forces, air forces, they are also helping them, right? So in this manner we should understand during disaster, suppose it is the floods happening, example I am giving, suppose floods are happening. So rescue is important, many people will be stranded during the floods, so rescuing them. And relief is basically, we are talking immediate relief, shelter, food, medicines. We are generally talking about disaster management, right? So those rescued people, they will be immediately requiring these three, right? So this is part of relief during the disaster. Disaster is ongoing. Then post disaster, in general, when we talk about post disaster, we talk about resettlement and rehabilitation. Resettlement and rehabilitation. Okay, so obviously what will happen many times during disaster, people loses on their homes, houses, they will be damaged. Okay, so they need to be resettled somewhere else. And rehabilitation, so these are long term aspects. Okay, so long term aspects, so the people need to, let's say, given or the new homes to be built in other places, and they need to be provided some basic services, be it in terms of medical, health, or we can say education to their children. Sustainable livelihood opportunities are to be given. Okay, so in this manner we should understand rehabilitation and resettlement. Okay, so obviously each and every disaster will have different type of rescue and relief operations, resettlement, rehab. You know, there is very good statement in NCERT. They say that every disaster is different. No one disaster is same. Okay, so basically they are talking about that a different kind of measures are required, different kind of response is required for each type of disaster. Okay, everything understood? Are you understanding everyone online?
Yes, sir.
Yes, if you have any doubt in between, you can, ask those doubts. Please feel free to ask questions. Okay,
Sure, sir.
yes. So I believe that you are not having doubts or questions. Otherwise, please, you can write also if you are very shy to talk. Okay, yes. Now let us go into details of every natural disaster, and first of all we are going to cover earthquake. Okay. Yes, so we all know about earthquake. If the people are living in Delhi, they may have felt also some of the tremors. Since when you are living in Delhi?
22? No,
Just now you came. All of you?
Yes, but heard a frequent.
Yes. You know what used to happen last year during lockdown actually. So people were at homes and there were many tremors felt during April and May month. So people were confused whether to go outside and die by the infection of corona or whether to stay at home and die because of this earthquake. There were memes on this joke actually. So we were very, let's say, fearful about these tremors, sometimes. And you may feel that because Delhi is, let's say, very important region of earthquake prone zone. It falls under zone 4 of whatever the zoning that has been done by Bureau of Indian Standard. Okay, so BIS has divided India into 4 those vulnerable zones. Risk mapping is done. We will try to know about that. But yes, the earthquake, basics about that, causing factor. We learned that in geography. Where are the old students? I am not having anyone old students from the previous batch, geography module. Okay, yes.
Folding of plates.
Yes. So what is happening inside the earth is there is continuous movement of these lithospheric plates. Okay, the plate tectonic theory explains the movement of these plates that is happening because of convection currents of magma in the mantle. Right, and because of that these plates are freely floating, moving let's say in different directions, and the interaction of these plates results into we can say that earthquakes. Basically earthquake is release of energy in the form of earthquake waves or seismic waves. So what happens? Let me just explain like this. Suppose these are 2 plates. Now suppose this plate is moving towards this place and there is obstruction by this plate and this is trying now, and there is accumulation of energy here where these 2 plates are meeting, and when this force of this plate moving towards left is surpassing that obstruction or friction, there will be sudden release of energy, and that energy we can say spreads throughout the interior of the earth in terms of earthquake waves. They are called as seismic waves, right? So the point from where the energy is released is called as focus of earthquake or epicenter, or what is epicenter or hypocenter? NCRT.
Intensity of earthquake is high.
No, it is not about intensity. We are talking about focus, whether it is hypocenter or epicenter.
So epicenter. Sir, if I forgot the term, if from the ground to top we are measuring, suppose at some depth there is originated, and at the surface it's from where the waves are created.
So the point where the earthquake waves reaching first on the surface, that is called epicenter. Rather the focus where the energy is released, that is called as hypocenter. Okay, So this technical terminology is there. You are going to read this in NCERT. And yes, now when these seismic waves are recorded on the seismograph that is there on the earth surface in our labs, so they are calculating, they are measuring this earthquake waves, right? So accordingly the earthquake is measured in two scales. One is magnitude scale called as Richter scale. Richter scale, do you know about Richter scale? Okay, and then there is Mercalli scale, which measures intensity of the earthquake. Mercalli scale 1 to 12, and then there is 1 to 10. Okay, so Richter scale and Mercalli scale, basically Richter scale talks about magnitude of the earthquake. Okay, and intensity scale, that is Mercalli scale, talks about destruction caused by the earthquake. That measures the destruction caused by the earthquake, that is intensity of the earthquake. Okay, so this is the difference between magnitude and intensity. Basics about that. Now, after understanding what is earthquake, how it is caused, we should understand that earthquake is sudden phenomenon or sudden event without any warning. There is no early warning, right? Other disaster there is at least warning. A cyclone, okay, cyclone is brewing there in Bay of Bengal, it may have landfall on the coastal areas. So earthquake, we do not know anything about that, and it is sudden, and we can say that it is having extensive impact, or we will say impact over large area. In this manner, we should understand the properties, characteristics of earthquake. Now, earthquake magnitude, it differs, varies. When it is lower than 4 or 3 on Richter scale, we call it as tremors. So that's why in news we often read like tremors were felt in Jammu Kashmir. Recently there was earthquake in which part of the country? Oh, large earthquake happened. Okay, magnitude 6, around 6. Few months back in Assam there was earthquake. A few months back, okay, around 6. This was Richter scale. No, not that much damage to the property or life, but we should understand that certain areas in India, they are earthquake prone. We are going to learn about that. Okay, now after understanding the nature of natural disaster or these causing factors, we are able to understand that nothing much we can do about the natural disaster here. So what we can do is preparedness. Disaster preparedness. How this preparedness can be done? So vulnerability mapping and risk mapping. This thing. Second thing, we can say that we can say earthquake resilient infrastructure. And third thing we can talk about is education and awareness among the people. What to do and what not to do during the earthquake. This is also important, right? So many times people get panic and they are not able to do what is required to do during the earthquake disaster. One can understand the nature of panicness that people may feel during this earthquake. Okay. But still, when the education is given to the people, or we can say they are made aware about what to do and what not to do on a scientific basis, then it may reduce the number of deaths. Obviously, the damage to the property depends on this. So what happens in Japan, where there are always tremors are felt and there is always possibility of large scale earthquakes. So there the people are aware, the risk mapping is done, and then the infrastructure is, we can say, earthquake resilient. So light material is used for building. Then we can say extensive construction is not there, scattered construction. Okay, so that's why the density, we can say, it is reduced. Then we can also say that the protective structures are built there. In each and every building, the protective structure are there. So whenever such kind of earthquake is happening, the people can get underneath of such structure. Okay, so in this manner, the lives are protected. So yes, obviously there is one map we should refer to understand the risk that we have in India. Yes. Look at this map. And it shows the risk zonation. Different parts of the country. So can you imagine, simply not looking at, but you just imagine which part of India would be more, or you say highly risk prone zone for earthquakes? You tell me.
So northern eastern zone.
Northern and eastern zone, we will say that the Himalayan belt and northeastern hills. Why? The reason?
Due to that folding.
Because it is converging planes.
Yes. So what is happening? It is plate boundary. So whenever there is convergent plate boundaries, there are deep-seated earthquakes. This is given in NCERT. Geography student should always be able to write the causing factors for all natural phenomena. Okay. So here, if we are saying that in Himalayas more earthquakes are happening, causing factor is that it is tectonically active zone where there are two plates converging plates. Indo-Australian plate is getting underneath Eurasian plate. Okay, and whole Himalayan belt is tectonically active, deep-seated earthquake with large magnitude earthquake can happen there. Okay, now why northeastern region or specifically Jammu and Kashmir region is more, we can say, prone even in the Himalayan belt? Much deeper level we can go.
Because this Indo-Asian plate, it's firstly meet at that point to Eurasian plate.
The appropriate word will be syntaxial bending. You are saying correctly that the meeting points are there and the more stress, we can say, is getting built there. Okay, so you should remember that our Indo-Australian plate is moving at the rate of 1 centimeter per year towards Eurasian plate, and this movement is more happening in this region and this region due to syntaxial bend. Syntaxial bend means, you can see here, the plate is bent like this. Here the plate is bent like this. There are two syntaxial bends that are there during this converging. Weak zones are formed because of this syntaxial bending. Okay, so it is not important for general studies. I am just explaining you in detail why more earthquakes are happening in that region. Okay, so in general, all Himalayan belt is tectonically active, and we can say that is included. You can see here very high damage risk zone, all Northeast India. All Northeast India. Then we can see here the Uttarakhand, then Jammu and Kashmir, and some parts of Himachal Pradesh also. Right? So,
Sir, are the human activities also responsible for the high earthquakes in that region?
no. Earthquake purely happening because of endogenetic forces.
Sir, like mining and high mining in that area.
We will
mining
say
activities.
that some of the tremors that are felt. See, there are different types of earthquakes. We learn that in geography. Tectonic earthquake. Then we learn about, let's say, collapse roof earthquake that is happening in mining area. Then we learn about volcanic earthquake. Then we learn about reservoir induced earthquake. Are you aware about these types? Earthquake happens due to volcanic eruption also in the nearby area. Because of the sudden eruption, the endogenetic forces, they result into tremors. Try to understand the magnitude of earthquake because of these reasons is very less as compared to tectonic forces. Tectonic forces. Okay, so tectonic means plates. Tectonic plates, they are converging. Are you getting this? Is this clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so whenever we are talking about earthquake as a disaster, largely we will focus on this tectonic earthquakes. Okay? Yes. Now, the other area which is mentioned as very severe or very high damage risk zone. Why this area is mentioned here? Yes? Bhuj earthquake 2001. Are you aware about that? You were there. So witnessed that. Oh, that was, let's say, very difficult times. I remember that some of my relatives were also there. Okay, so Bhuj earthquake that happened, basically Kutch region, this particular part. So this is witnessing faulting phenomenon. So within plate there can be faulting phenomenon happening within plate. Okay, so there are two such areas, this area and there is one area in Maharashtra somewhere here. It is not mentioned. It is not mentioned, but near Latur district of Maharashtra, there is Kurduvadi fault. Okay, and in 1993 there was earthquake in that region. In 1993, around 10,000 people died. Okay, so you should remember whenever the earthquake happens in the past, important events, so you can remember these natural disasters. So these are happening due to intraplate faulting phenomenon. There are names given to these faults also. What is the name of fault here? Alaband fault. Remember this for geography. Alaband fault is there, and here Kurduvadi fault is there. Kurduvadi fault. Okay, and then there was in 1967 in Western Maharashtra there is Koyna Dam is there, and there reservoir induced earthquake happened. Okay, Koyna Dam earthquake which is being said.
It is also very prone to.
Yes, yes. This is because of the reservoir that is created on Koyna river. Okay, hydroelectricity plant is also there. Fine. So that's why it is considered as severe zone. Actually, it is mentioned here, high damage risk zone. Okay, now less severe we will try to cover is high damage risk zone. Light grey color is mentioned. So the surrounding regions of very high damage, which are these? You can see the remaining part of Himalayan region, Shivaliks, as well as some parts of Delhi. You can see here Delhi ridge, we'll say. So Delhi is part of now high damage risk zone, we'll say.
Sir, the Kangra earthquake which was happened, so any specific fault name for it which was happening in Punjab 1905?
Kangra, Himachal Pradesh, you are saying? Kangra is in Himachal Pradesh, no?
Yes.
Kangra Valley? Yes, that is part of very severe, or we'll say very high damage. Not faulting, we'll say that is already in, we can say, part of tectonic forces. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will not go into detail, that is part of geography optional. because whatever the boundary we have, converging boundary, there are many such faults are there. Okay, so that is technical terms, the Himalayan faults we say that. Okay, so but that is not part of syllabus, so we will not go into that much detail here. Now you can see the surrounding region of this part also. Then again the remaining part you can see, this is the region, and also you can see the Tarai region will say. Okay, Tarai region of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, just when the Himalayas ends, that is Tarai region. Okay, now after understanding this, we will try to know about okay. Yes, so low damage. Yes, low damage risk zone, which is this area. Largely the peninsular area is very stable. Remember this. Peninsular block or part of India is very stable and it is not tectonically active. So whatever the remaining two zones are there, largely it is covered by peninsular India. So you can see low damage risk zone and very low damage ... and surrounding region. It is completely covering the remaining part and central highlands and Aravalis. This is a much older as compared to newly formed Himalayas. Himalayas were formed in tertiary period. They were formed in tertiary period. We will say that the formation year ranges from 40 million years ago to 10 or 15 million years ago. Three different ranges were formed, right? But this peninsular block is ancient times. We do not even remember when it was formed. So it is very stable, rigid block, tectonically very stable, we will say that. Not many activities are going on. So remaining part, just you can shade that. Okay, now why this Western Ghats coastal area they have mentioned in, we can say, moderate damage risk zone. This and some parts of Vindhyas. Can you see here? Vindhyas and Satpuras, they are formed through which phenomenon? Faulting phenomenon. Not faults, we will say faults. They are faults. Horses and grabens. 6th standard NCERT. Okay, which is the example in Europe? Horses and grabens formed through faulting phenomenon. Vosges Mountains and Rhine Valley, it is mentioned there in 6th standard NCERT. Okay, so in Vindhyas and Satpuras, the Narmada Valley that is formed, basically it is formed because of faulting phenomenon. How it is formed? Any idea? See, when this Indo-Australian plate, when it is getting submerged, okay, under this, suppose this is Eurasian plate, suppose, and when it was getting subducted like this, no, there was crack like this. Which is this region? This is part of that central India, central highlands and Vindhyas. Yes. So there was, let's say, tectonic forces acting on this region, and there was faulting like this happening there. Okay, and because of that, the central part of that Narmada Valley went down like this, and other two remains the blocks like this. Okay, so Vindhyas and Satpuras are block mountains, we can say, or they will be called as the fault formed due to fault. They will be called as horses, and the river valley or the Narmada river then started flowing through it. Okay, so that will be called as graben. Okay, so this region we will say that moderate damage risk zone. We can say that they are of comparatively recent origin as compared to Deccan Plateau, or we can say this what you can say, Chota Nagpur Plateau. So they are of ancient times. Also Western Ghats 60 million years ago, when we can say that before that also this peninsula when started moving towards this Eurasian plate after breaking off from Gondwana land, reunion hotspot, extensive volcanic activity. Okay, so because of that Deccan Plateau was formed, and later on what happened is the Arabian Sea ocean floor subsided. The Arabian Sea ocean floor subsided, and because of that we can say the Western Ghats are formed. Okay, so in this manner you should remember this. Is this clear? So because of recent tectonic activities we are calling it as moderate damage as compared to remaining much stable dam. Any doubt that you have? Yes, समझ में आ रहा है सब? Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now after understanding, yes, any question if you have you can ask. Okay. Now after understanding this risk zoning and the preparedness, just now we talked about that. So in school level also we learned about education and awareness. So what is the first thing during this disaster that you should do? Yes?
hide under table.
अर्थक्वेक आ रहा है तो क्या करेंगे?
टेबल के नीचे
Immediately try to bend down, sit down, or try to find some place where you can protect your head. First and foremost priority. Okay, protect your head, cover your head with hard thing. Either get underneath with under the table or some place where you can protect your head, because head is the main thing, no? If head is damaged, then we are not going to get our life. Okay, save our life. So this is the major thing. Then there are other things also. Immediately, if you are living in ground floor, go to the open spaces, not nearby any building or any electric pole, right? So go to the open spaces. If you cannot go to the open places, remain near the pillar. Hold any strong, stable, let's say area or articles in your home. Okay, they will not move, like pillar will not move, right? So go to the pillar. Pillar will not also fall. Other ceilings will fall, but pillar will not fall. So that's why it is said that go to the door. Stand near the door. Hold that door. Hold the door. No one watches Games of Thrones. Game of Thrones, hold the door. Hodor.
2012 in my jail.
See.
2012.
Yes.
And today was clear instruction about the education.
Yes. So I do not promote watching such web series. I am not saying that you should watch. I am just trying to make it fun. But yes, jokes apart. Now, yes, that is part of education and awareness. The people, especially those living in high risk areas, they should be made aware about what to do during this disaster. Now, what is required to be done after that disaster? Help the administration in rescue operation. If you are safe, then you can say that you can help the administration, the other people in rescuing. At the same time, what you can do is try to contact your loved ones and communicate with them that your family members that you are safe. Okay, obviously communication lines may not be working. You can contact the administration, they will notify everything. So basically what happens is after this disaster there is panic situation. This panic situation can further create problem. Try to understand this, because tremors are not one constant thing. There can be after earthquake tremors also. Okay, and that's why it is being said that you go to open spaces and stay there for some time. because there can be after earthquake tremors. Okay, so surely this should be followed, and obviously what is the major aspect, in the post disaster is we can say that the relocation and resettlement and rehabilitation aspects are very important, because everything is damaged in that area. Okay, and you should understand the concept or the condition that is called as post-disaster trauma, the psychological condition that people face, and this remains for years. So basically it is not effectively dealt. The health, psychological health is very important, and the people faces post-disaster trauma, and this is there even after that disaster for many years. So they need to be counseled. Psychological counseling is very important of the people. Okay, so also obviously the administration. So rescue and relief immediately after the disaster, and we can say that resettlement and rehab is part of that. The most important responsibility is, we can say that, establishing communication channels. This is very important. It will reduce the panic in the area. Along with that, it is also important to have some kind of, let's say, monetary relief to those who died. Okay, so their relatives, they should get some ex gratia relief. Along with that, they need to be provided some kind of employment opportunities also. So all these things are part of government support, administrative support. Okay, so post disaster, we can say it is part of resettlement and rehabilitation. There is one more threat which was observed during Bhuj earthquake also, when there is large scale loss of life, and when these bodies remain in the place for 2-3 days, there are chances of infection spreading, disease spreading in that area. So immediately there is requirement of collection of dead bodies and their burial and cremation. This is very important responsibility of administration. Okay, so in this manner we should talk about this disaster. So what you will write as a main points: vulnerability and risk mapping, then resilient infrastructure, and then education and awareness. The major points and go on elaborating them, and ultimately you can talk about the post disaster aspects. So these are pre-disaster, right? Preparedness aspect is there. Post disaster, you can talk about responsibility of the administration, responsibility of the people. Sub points should be there, right? Structure should be maintained in the answer. If you go on writing 10 points, and if you write 10 points under sub points, like you will write pre-disaster, during disaster, post-disaster. There is nothing much you can do during disaster. Pre-disaster, post-disaster. In even that post-disaster, responsibility of administration, responsibility of the people. In this manner, you divide that. More effective answer. And this is applied to each and every paper, including your optional. Okay? Now, moving on. Second, we will try to cover cyclone. Okay, and then thereafter we will try to write these things, because simultaneously dictation should also go on. Otherwise, next lecture of disaster management may happen next month, and you will forget everything. Okay, so yes, cyclones, tropical cyclones, basics about that. In geography, we learn about tropical cyclones as the low pressure systems around which, or we can say, the wind is rotating around the low pressure systems. And these cyclones or tropical depressions, we can call them, they are formed over the sea surface. there are some preconditions that are required for formation and intensification of tropical cyclones, right? So what are these preconditions? One by one. Foundation batch. When I say foundation batch, I refer to earlier geography module. You joined later on, okay? So earlier geography module is completed.
Should be given to Fisher batch.
No. Precondition for formation and intensification of cyclone. We are talking about concept.
So, surface of the seashore area is going to be low pressure. It will be due to air pressure. It will be water will be high pressure. Low condition air will be evacuated. Due
See.
to that air evacuation and water molecules, it will get the circulation motion.
When I say you write 4 precondition, when the UPC asks question that what are the preconditions for the formation, you should write 1, 2, 3, 4 directly. So there should not be beating around the bush. Do not talk about the peripheral things. Exactly the content should be written. Okay, so first point, you should talk about availability, continuous availability of warm waters. The temperatures of sea surface should be more than 27 degrees Celsius. First important condition. Second, availability of Coriolis force. When there is no Coriolis force, there will not be cyclone formation. For example, near equator, there will not be cyclone formation because of absence of Coriolis force. So generally cyclones are forming between 5 degree north to 20 degree north. Same is the south, 5 degree south to 20 degree south. Generally the cyclones originate in that because there is availability of or presence of, we can say, Coriolis force. The third thing you should understand is that there should not be variations in the vertical wind directions. Okay, and because of that there should be uniform heat transfer in the vertical manner. There should be presence of upper air divergence so that the wind that is moving in upward direction is getting diverged. There will be some kind of high pressure there and the wind is getting diverged like this. So that's why the wind circulation is happening. There should be presence of low pressure points on the ocean surface around which this cyclone get intensified. Okay, these are 4 to 5 preconditions. Simply enlist them. I am telling you, geography is in GS1 paper the highest scoring part of whole GS1. Other things are like explanatory, or in history you go on explaining something, you may not remember something. In geography, if you understand the concept, you are going to fetch more marks. Okay, so always focus on writing exact content. So here we are talking about precondition. We know about structure of cyclone. There is eye at the center where there is low pressure. There is eye wall surrounding it. Right? There is eye wall surrounding it, and then there are rain bands extending from this eye wall. So these rain bands are basically clouds, cumulonimbus clouds, nimbus clouds. They are actually rain bearing clouds. There will be huge rainfalls from these clouds. Okay, so what is happening? The wind around that low pressure is moving up in a fast speed in a spiral manner like this, and then getting diverged like this. Okay, but at the eye or at the center, there is subsiding feeble winds, low speed warm winds like this. Okay, so eye wall is zone of turbulence, but eye is zone of calm. There is no clouds formation at the center. Okay, so this is basic concept. Now, so after understanding concept, we know that in Indian Ocean region, there are 2 seasons of cyclone formation. Okay, pre-monsoon, post-monsoon season. There are 2 seasons. As we know that IT season shifts, let's say after the equinoxes in what you can say March month. What happens after March? There is northward apparent movement of sun. and because of that ITCZ is shifting up towards Tropic of Cancer. And during winter, what happens? Tropic of Cancer, the apparent movement of sun happens towards Tropic of Capricorn. So there is summer in the southern hemisphere when there is winter in the northern hemisphere. Because of this movement of ITCZ, intertropical convergence zone, which is, let's say, the heating of ocean surface in Bay of Bengal, North Indian Ocean region, is up to the point or above that 27 degrees Celsius, which favors the formation of these cyclones. Okay, what are these two seasons? Especially during May and June, before monsoon. After monsoon, we can experience especially during September, October, November, December. This is the time period. Okay, so during these two, we can experience the cyclones originating in Indian Ocean region. Largely, there are questions in GS1 paper that yes, why more cyclones originate in Bay of Bengal as compared to Arabian Sea, but that is part of GS1. They will not ask in disaster management. Yes, in disaster management, cyclone, the characteristics of disasters. First thing we should understand that there is, we can say that there can be early warning about this cyclone. It can be given, right? Because we are able to track the movement of cyclones on the basis of GPS, global positioning system. Satellites are helping to understand or tracking of cyclone movement. With the help of satellites, imageries and information, and because of that the early warning can be given in the coastal areas. So to some extent we have improved our disaster management in terms of cyclone, or we'll say that in cyclone management. In last 2 decades especially, we can mention that during 1999 super cyclone that was there in Odisha, which resulted into loss of huge number of lives. After that, now after 20 years, when there were super cyclone Amphan was there last year, at the same time this year many cyclones were there. So we are able to reduce the loss of life, but still we need to work on loss of property. Okay, but before that we should also understand that such kind of disasters are having some unwanted, undesirable consequences. First thing, we know that life is at stake, but the infrastructure is getting damaged in the coastal area. So be it in terms of telecom towers, electricity wires, or these connections, they are getting damaged. Crop damage is there because of wind speed. Then there is, we can say that seawater ingression happening because of storm surges. Seawater ingression is happening. Huge intense rainfall in short time. It can lead to flooding of coastal areas. Okay, so this is what we can say that the impact of this cyclone is happening in the coastal area. But rather than that, we will focus on management of disaster. Again, we will divide it in 3 parts: pre-disaster or during disaster and post-disaster. Now, pre-disaster, first and foremost is early warning system, the information dissemination, very important. Okay, so we have the early warning system by IMD, India Meteorological Department, and now it is very efficient. So it is not only given on some electronic platforms, but on all platforms, on all communication channels, even through SMS. It is given to all people in the coastal areas where there is possibility of landfall. So this is effective. Second thing, you should talk about the preparedness, administrative preparedness. Whenever you talk about administrative preparedness, no, you always talk about at district level, because you are going to be the head of this crisis management. District collectors, they are the we can say in command here to mobilize the resources as a response to these disasters. Okay, so administrative preparedness, be it in terms of we can say rescue and relief, or we can say that the availability of the shelter homes. Then you can talk about the availability of the medicines, food for at least 2-3 days, those whenever the people are rescued or those people who are relocated, asked to go into the shelter homes. So that is also part of pre-disaster. So this can be, we can say that evacuation. See, evacuation is pre-disaster. Rescue is during disaster. Evacuation before disaster, right? So evacuation is very important part of cyclone management, pre-disaster. Okay, so evacuation of even lakhs of people happens in Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so from coastal areas they are evacuated to the interiors. They are asked to remain in the shelter homes where we can say food and medicines are made available to these people. Okay, then we can talk about emergency communication channels like satellite radios. Satellite phones are there, right? So satellite communication, that is very important part of administrative preparedness. So resource mobilization, this is part of pre-disaster management, and then evacuation. Then during, you can say that the rescue and relief. Basically it is related to shelter, medicine and food. But this is also part of rescue and relief of fishermen stranded in the sea.
Sir, in early morning we can call the wake. Sir,
Yes, but some of them are not aware also. They may not have contact, no? They may not get the warning.
Sir, at present they are connected to satellite.
Yes, they are connected. We know about that. But you know, very few of them, these boats get stranded. You know, they are not able to come back on the shores. So sometimes Navy, Coast Guard, they comes to rescue them. Okay, during the disaster. This happened during this cyclone Nisarg along the western coast last year before monsoon. Okay, so fishermen actually, not all fishermen are having that satellite phones or we can say radio communication. So this is also during disaster. Then post disaster, you can say that again resettlement, rehabilitation of coastal community. Resettlement and rehabilitation of coastal community, same things are to be written, but we should understand here that there is again the post disaster trauma is there and the loss of livelihood is there, all these things are there. So they need some kind of monetary relief also. Always talk about monetary relief, though it cannot, let's say, bring back the lives of the people, but to some extent it will help them to live the life now. Okay, so always talk about monetary relief whenever we talk, but not as a first. You should mention ex gratia relief to them, then rehabilitation of coastal communities. But all these things are there. But when we talk about disaster preparedness, no, as a long-term measure, you should talk about mitigation measures and adaptation measures. What are mitigation and adaptation measures for cyclone? Like we talked about earthquake resilient infrastructure. Yes. Reducing the impact of cyclone. Yes. Shelter belts. Trees should be planted along the coasts to reduce the wind speed. Thereby damage of the crops will reduce. Or the damage to the household structure will reduce. Shelter belts. Very important. Second, you can talk about storm water drains. Building storm water drains, it will reduce flooding. Okay, so why flooding is happening in the coastal cities? Because of intense rainfall is there and the storm drains are not working. Okay, so we need to have effective storm water drains that will drain out the ocean water or whatever the rainfall, excess rainfall that happened. Okay, so this will reduce flooding. Third thing, salt water tolerant varieties of crops, especially paddy, rice in coastal areas. This is very important because the sea water is getting into the land due to those storm surges and this damages crops. This changes the soil nutrients mix, we can say. Okay, so increase in salinity in the soil is harmful for the plants or crops. So what we can promote? Salt water tolerant or salt tolerant, salinity tolerant varieties. These are being developed actually. Okay, then you can say that in coastal areas, what can be adaptation again? Yes, no construction, no excessive construction, we can say, or illegal construction. In coastal areas where high risk is there. So we can say that effective implementation of coastal regulation zones. Are you aware about this? CRZ.
It will be limited in height also.
Yes.
Coastal areas they have no permission to build large structures.
Yes, yes. In height also the buildings, their stories. Basically CRZ implementation is very important. Okay, so it talks about the construction activities in a particular part, high tide line, low tide line. So it will reduce the impact of cyclones on life and property. These are mitigation and adaptation measures. Okay, so add these points when we write all these pre, during and post disaster. Okay, any doubt, any question that you have?
So in storm water drains, sir, in that all the water goes either to the river or to the ocean. But sir, at the coastal city there is a problem that at that time there is always a high tide of chance. So
Yes, very good. So if there is high tide, then their water is not draining out, right? So actually this becomes problem in many cities. Okay, so obviously the drains should be in frame, or we can say designed in such manner that high tide situation should be also taken into consideration. Okay, so this actually happened in 2005 floods in Mumbai. Okay, but that is because of monsoon rainfall. But basically intensive rainfall in short period of time, this is the major cause. Why this flooding is happening? Because excess water runoff is not going into the streams or ocean. So drains should be appropriately designed. At the same time, we should understand the drainage should not be allowed to go into these storm drains. Okay, otherwise its capacity will reduce. There should be separate drains, right? So this is what is happening. Actually in future we are going to witness more and more cyclones as a result or as a manifestation of global warming. Okay, so we should be always considering or make our coastal cities more resilient to these cyclones.
So now pumping stations are set up in near coastal cities.
Pumping
stations near coastlines of Mumbai.
Yes.
They are working in full capacity during high tides to
Okay.
get the water.
Yes. It is also good measure. But what we can say that this is only feasible in cities. Okay, so obviously whenever we are talking about coastal cities, you provide such measures, but in rural areas, shelter belts, reduce the speed. Yes, one more thing. Oh, very important. Protect mangroves. Protect and conserve mangroves forest. They act as a shock absorber. Okay, they act as a shock absorber to these storm surges. So they does not allow the saline water to enter into the land. This is good thing, right? Natural barriers, right? So these are mitigation and adaptation measures. Okay, yes, any question? Otherwise what we'll do, we'll try to write all these points. Okay? Yes? You wrote? No, we are going to write everything in detail now. Yes. Sorry? Yes. Write down disaster management. Okay, you wrote down this agenda, no?
Yes.
That is fine. Okay. Disaster management. So we'll start with the concept of natural hazards and natural disaster. Yes, write down. Natural hazards are part of natural environment, are part of natural environment which may have the potential to cause harm to the people, or property, or both. They are permanent aspects of natural environment. They are permanent aspects of natural environment. That is, they have been part of nature before evolution of humans.
Sir, can you please repeat?
Okay. Yes, so I was talking about natural environment. Yes. Yes, please repeat what I was saying.
Been a part of nature before evolution.
No, earlier than that.
Permanent aspects of natural.
Yes, write down. They are permanent aspects of natural environment. They are permanent aspects of natural environment. That is, they have been happening even before the evolution of human. Happening even before the evolution of human being. For example, tropical cyclones, earthquakes, soil erosion, extreme temperatures, extreme atmospheric temperatures, landslides, etc. Now write down natural disasters. Natural disasters. Natural disasters are undesirable changes happening in the environment, of which the forces responsible for them are largely out of control of human being, comma, they are sudden without very little or no warning. They happen or occur without very little or no warning, comma, result into large scale loss of life and property, and requires large scale mobilization of resources to effectively deal with it. Write down note. The key difference between natural hazard and natural disaster is the former does not have impact on human life and property, while latter has large scale impact on human life and property. While the latter, that is natural disaster, they have large scale impact on human life and property. So can we say that, yes, do not write can we say that, obviously, no? Yes. So all disasters are hazards or all hazards are disaster?
Hazards may be disasters.
All natural disasters are natural hazards, but not all natural hazards are natural disasters. Right? That is, all natural disasters are natural hazards. All natural disasters are natural hazards, but not all natural hazards are natural disasters. Okay, next point we will write down. In the early times, write down, in the early times, human was largely at the receiving end of natural disasters, and little was known about these natural phenomena. Therefore, we were not able to reduce loss of human life and property. But with the developments in the science and technology, and understanding of geographical phenomenon in detail, it has become possible to manage some of the natural disasters so as to reduce loss of life and property. This is what our field is, the disaster management. This is what we are talking now. Okay, now we will talk about, we will write down this later. First of all, we will talk about types of disasters. Write down this. Make a table. Types of disaster or classification of disasters. Classification of natural disasters, we will say. Yes, is it visible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, okay. write these 4 only now. We'll write down about these later. Okay, is this completed? Atmospheric, terrestrial, aquatic, biological. Okay. We have to make habit to write fast. In examination also we have to write fast. Now write down next point, next paragraph. The above mentioned natural disasters. The above mentioned natural disasters, their frequency and their intensity. Their frequency and their intensity has been aggravated because of human activities. Because of human activities. For example, landslides. For example, landslides. The human activities such as deforestation along the hill slopes or mountain slopes, deforestation along the mountain slopes, comma, unsustainable construction activities, and infrastructure projects, comma, unscientific farming practices, are resulting into more and more landslides, especially in Himalayan region, comma, Northeast India and Western Ghats. See, whenever you are writing, specific question, suppose specific question asks landslides in Himalayas. Okay, you need to specifically mention the reasons to that. What is the reason for landslides in Himalayas? 3 reasons. One natural reason, fragile topography. Okay, unconsolidated material is there. No, let's say solid rocks. These are actually deposits which are got folded. So they are unconsolidated deposits, right? They are easily coming down along the slopes. Natural factor. Second, tectonically active. It is natural factor. Third, you mentioned the man-made factor. Unsustainable construction activities, deforestation and infrastructure projects like hydropower dams. Right? That is specific to that. Now when we talk about Western Ghats, What you should mention there for landslides? This is part of geography, okay, not disaster management, I am telling you. Okay, so in Western Ghats, what is the specific reason? Sorry?
Floods.
No. Landslides, floods is not major reason, we'll say. Talk about intensive rainfall. During 4 months of monsoon time period, western slopes of Western Ghats receive more than 250 centimeter rainfall. Intensive rainfall, second reason. Mining is the one of the major reason, you can say, Western Ghats. Okay, fragile ecology is there. Mining is one of the major. Third, construction, but specifically for tourism activity. Kerala, Karnataka. Why landslides happen in Kerala? That Kozhikode district is there. Every year, last 2 years, the plantation laborers, last year that landslide happened. Whole plantation habitat or those workers, their farm houses, they completely destructed because of landslide. Okay, so basically unsustainable construction activities because of tourism practices or unsustainable tourism practices, we'll say. Okay, so in this manner specific. What is in northeast? You know, very specific. Unscientific agriculture or farming practices, zoom cultivation. Zoom cultivation, what they do in zoom cultivation or slash and burn type of agriculture, they burn the forest tracts. Okay, and because of that deforestation happens. Basically that is resulting into landslides there, and also intensive rainfall during monsoon time period. Also this region also receives more than 200 or 250 centimeter rainfall. So mention specific answers, the reasons whenever it is asked in the question. Otherwise general reasons you can mention. You can give other reason like other, let's say, examples here. After landslide you give example of ozone layer depletion, comma, global warming due to greenhouse gases, ozone hole depletion, global warming due to greenhouse gases, environmental pollution, comma, soil erosion, etc. Okay. Now next point we'll write down man-made disaster. Man-made disasters. Write down some instances or incidents happen due to or completely happen, write down, completely happen due to human factors. Completely happen due to human factors and result into loss of life and property, They are called man-made disasters. Example, for example, industrial and chemical disasters, chemical disasters. There you can write down in bracket Bhopal gas tragedy or incidents, Bhopal gas leak incidents, you can write down Vizag Serine gas, sorry, serine or styrene, what was the name? Anyone remembers? Serine gas, yes. Okay. So you can give that example. Then you can give example of nuclear accidents or nuclear disasters also. And there you can give example of Chernobyl, then Fukushima, that is disaster. Chernobyl, Fukushima disaster 2011. Then another example you can give stampedes. Then other example you can give of hospital fires. Okay, in last 1 year during this pandemic, many such instances, like there was one incident in Mumbai recently, the hospital fires, the makeover, let's say hospital was made there in the mall complex. So there hospital fire happened. Then many such places where COVID-19 facilities, their hospital fires were, that's why it was in news. Yes? Okay. Now, next point we will write down after this man-made disasters. Let us write down disaster management and its components. Disaster management and its components. Write down. Disaster management deals with management of disasters, in such a way that there is minimum loss of human life and property. Okay, so this can be a simple definition. You can start with introduction like this. If suppose a simple question is asked on disaster management, simply start with this. Now write down. The disaster management cycle goes through three stages. And different activities are carried out. During these stages. As a response to the disaster. Okay, so write down these three stages. Pre-disaster, or you will say that this is disaster preparedness. It involves largely planning, and we can say making aware people aware about, and then we can talk about mobilization of resources, early warning system, and all these things. Pre-disaster. Then second stage is during disaster. During disaster, and then post disaster. During disaster, write down a rescue and relief. Rescue and relief. In relief, you can talk about shelter, then food and medicine, first aid. Post disaster, resettlement and rehabilitation. There is one famous diagram. If you Google the disaster management cycle, so you will find that diagram. We will draw that, how that cycle looks like. Okay, is this complete?
Yes.
Okay, now we will try to draw that. Okay, so suppose this is disaster, timing of disaster, suppose this. So this is pre-disaster, this is post-disaster. Okay, so it talks about like this. The cycle goes on like this. This is preparedness. All the activities in the preparedness comes here. Then this is, we will say, during disaster. So relief and rescue and relief activities are there. And then you can say remaining part, post disaster, resettlement and rehabilitation. Generally, when we say post disaster, 3 R's are important. We say post disaster, 3 R's are important. Okay, so which are these? Relief, resettlement, rehabilitation. Rescue is during disaster largely. Relief is common to both actually. Okay, because relief is not instantaneous, no. Relief can be given even immediately after the disaster also. Because some disasters are very quick, sudden, like earthquake. So during earthquake there is no specific relief, no. After disaster only we give relief. Those injured people, immediately we are rescuing them, giving some relief immediately, right? So it is part of both, we will say. Generally. Rehabilitation. In rehabilitation, try to understand, it is very, comprehensive long-term process. We will write down that part also. In rehabilitation, just you can mention here that it is long-term process which involves economic and social and psychological aspects. Involves all three. Okay, economic, so you can mention sustainable livelihood opportunities. In social, you can say that they need to be provided with schools, medical health facilities. There need to be have some kind of social cohesion also. When the people are losing their social bonding, it will take time to make some social bonding, right? New social bonding. So that's why rehabilitation is very long-term process. And psychological, yes, post-disaster trauma they are facing. They are let's say facing the what you can say, the trauma regarding the loss of their near and dear ones, right? So because of that, the psychological rehabilitation means counseling is required, or we can say that some recreational activities are also required. Okay, some kind of security is required to them. So what government should do in such kind of, let's say, support, not only ex gratia support, but some amount of, let's say, money should be deposited in the name of their children, so they can that can be used after when they are getting at 18 years of age for their higher education, or suppose for marriage expenditure of the female child. So this is security. This is very important because they have lost everything. The people, they have lost everything. Okay, so that's why this is called as long term, that is rehabilitation. Yes, you are asking something.
No. So rehabilitation, I thought resettlements only is building of new.
Resettlement, it can be temporary aspect, you know.
Okay, temporary.
Resettlement can be temporary aspect, and we can say that resettlement is also a little part of rehabilitation, you know. It can be continued there, but resettlement can be temporary also. The people can go back to their original places after some years, let's say rebuilding of their homes and all these things. Okay, so both aspects. Fine. So now write down. After that, one by one we'll deal with all disasters. So there we'll write down natural disasters. Natural disasters and their management. Natural disasters and their management. Okay, so I guess time is not there. Okay, so earthquake, and this will again we'll have later on dictation. What we'll do is, this will be revision for you also. Okay, so whatever we have learned, we'll have quick revision in next lecture. We'll have dictation also. That will be some continuity. Okay, so remaining disasters. So we'll try to cover the floods, droughts, then we'll try to cover the thunderstorm, lightning also, forest fires, and yes, tsunami also. Basically we'll try to cover each and every disaster, especially recently in news, because UPSC is asking current kind of linkages to it. Okay, so UPSC already asked landslides, earthquake, so there is less chance repetition. We are expecting cyclones, we are expecting let's say COVID-19 related, forest fire is related, hospital fires and safety related. Okay, such kind of questions can be asked. So we will give more focus to them. You are going to attempt next year, right?
Yes.
2022, all of you. Some of you are attempting for 23 also. For them again more clarity on trend will be there. Okay, but now after these 3-4 lectures, you will have separate study material and understanding of disaster management model. Okay, so hereafter what you need to follow after completion of module, follow current affairs and just temporarily give visit to this NDMA website. Try to follow that monthly bulletin, try to make some notes. Only 8 to 10 page bulletin is there, monthly bulletin, but very important and much relevant information for your examination. Okay, and very few other let's say people know about this. Try to understand. Okay, disaster management, how to get resources, this is a major problem. Okay, so let us stop.